Welcome to the Empowered Money Girl, where we break down the barriers to financial confidence, celebrate women's wins, and reveal the secrets to living boldly and well. I'm your host, Josette Mandela. Today's guest is Katie Bigelow. Katie flew medevac missions in Iraq and across the U.S. So when she says warfighter first, it's not a slogan, it's a lived experience. She founded Mettle Ops in 2013, grew it from her kitchen table to over 200 million in defense contracts, and built a team laser focused on soldier survivability. Her battlefield perspective shapes every decision, from tech strategy to supplier sourcing. Off the clock, she runs a combat op of her own, raising 8 kids with her husband and partner, Mark. Please welcome the resilient, visionary, and deeply inspiring Katie Bigelow.
Hey, Josette, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. So, Katie, can you take us back to the beginning? What was your path like to where you are today?
Um, well, if you want to talk about the business, when I can kind of go back a little further. I spent 10 years in the Army, and I got out. Thought maybe I wanted to be a housewife, and so I did that. And I started to find every day that I was hungry for something more. Meanwhile, I had married, my husband was when we were married, he was an artillery officer. He was an Army guy, and he switched to becoming an acquisitions officer. And so when I got out of the military, that was right about when the switch happened. And we also moved, and I also had a new son. And we moved to an area where we didn't know anybody. And so it was just kind of him and I and our baby. And so he'd come home every day from work and tell me all about his day at work. And after a while, I was like, wait a minute, you paid somebody to do what? Like, I would like to do something like that. And it wasn't really possible. By then I had 2 kids. I think one of my sons was a special needs son, and my husband was still active duty, but it was kind of the seed for a dream. And so then to fast forward a couple of years, my husband retired out of the military, and he went to work in industry, and he came home one day and said, you know, that business you've always talked about? He's like, I think you should do it. And so what is now much different than what I originally imagined, it was going to be my side gig, like while the kids were napping, is I wanted to do like government projects, just small ones, nothing big, like from the kitchen table, like you mentioned. And so that's how we got started. And now we've been in business 13 years, and 13 years next month. My husband now quit his job and came and worked with me. And we have over 100 employees, and we have through 4 locations in Michigan and one in Alabama and one in Indiana. And then we're actually adding another one here by the end of summer here in Michigan.
Wow. Going from being in the military and having pretty structured life, then deciding that you wanted to be married, and then the next thing you know, you decide, I'm kind of bored with just being a housewife. I think I want a little more. Opening a business at the kitchen table that's just supposed to be, a little part-time thing. And now you've got over 100 people. Wow.
Yeah, it definitely life is different. And it wasn't so much I was bored with being a housewife, because I think that's actually a really, really hard job. I just I found that I wasn't fantastic at it. Like I was always finding jobs to do outside and of the home, and I loved my children, but I really did struggle at first too working, because I felt like, if I had the opportunity to be with my kids, I should seize every moment. And so I worked from home for a long time, like kind of a ridiculous long time. I we worked from the front at the foyer of the house. We had like 5 employees in the foyer of the house, and then we moved to the basement, and then we had like 12 employees, 15 employees coming to my house and working out of the basement. And my husband kept pushing me like, "Hey, don't you think we should not be working here? We should work at a building." And when we finally did get a building, I was so upset about leaving my kids every day that I told myself I'll just do it once a week. I'll work from home the rest of the time. And I really had to work up to it. And I remember like going in and spending the whole day working and getting home. And I was just like, kids, how was it? Did you miss mommy? And they were like, nope. They didn't even care. Um, so a lot of what I should be doing was in my head, and I've had to learn that lesson over and over again in life that I had a lot of shoulds in my head, and turned out I didn't have to do it that way.
That's pretty funny how you come home and ask the kids, "So did you miss me?" And they're like, "It's okay, mommy. You can go to work."
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So in that journey, I'm sure that you learned a lot about financial challenges because contracting for the government, I mean, there's a long lead time on getting projects and getting the money starting to roll in, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. Or government shuts down, or projects get delayed, or, one of my bigger projects that we work on now, I looked back on my schedule, and from our first customer meeting till the day that the contract signatures were dry, it was almost exactly 2 years. So a very long sales cycle. So yeah, when I first got started, my model was a little different than it is now. I mean, now we literally win projects and work on them for and with the U.S. government. But back then, I did a lot of like consulting. So in the defense industry, consultants are very expensive, and most people who are small businesses that want to get in defense can't afford like a regular defense consultant because they cost a lot. And so the way I got started was to kind of, because I really didn't have the pedigree to be a defense consultant, is I worked as a consultant, but I got paid for basically what I knew, which was not very much. But it was really cool because the company got somebody trying and working on winning, getting them set up in the government system and bidding on contracts. And I won some for them. And meanwhile, I got paid to learn to do it. And so that model worked for quite a long time, and I learned a lot. And then eventually, I couldn't continue to sustain that because I'm only one person, and consulting is hard to scale unless you bring in more consultants. And
Mhm.
so we don't really do that kind of work, but it was sort of the way we made the money work at first was, and then we've had a lot of challenges over time. The bigger we are, it's funny because there was a day where if everything fell apart, I could empty every savings account and I could still make payroll. Where we're not in that day anymore. The business has to run in order to make payroll. And so yeah, it's funny, and I'm really glad that the challenges that I have now aren't what they were 10 years ago, because I don't know how I would have done it. Like I had to like face a challenge, get over the hurdle, and then do a bigger one, and then get over that hurdle and do a bigger one. So when we talk about like shutdowns or how COVID affected us, you know, um, it helped that we were still growing and learning. And so there were times, it was funny. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's an app called Future Me, and you can write yourself a letter and put the date and have it mailed to you in the future. And when I was in my MBA program, one of my instructors made me do it. And so when I got the letter, I think I got the letter like 2 years later. And it was kind of funny because it was like, by the time you read this, your oldest son will be driving. And in the comment was, please God, let him be more responsible than he is right now. And I had to laugh. But also in the letter was like, I don't know how we're going to make payroll this month. And that was years ago. So somebody from my organization listening to this now doesn't have to worry. It's fine. But I almost, I got over those hurdles and then kind of forgot about them because the next hurdle was bigger. But then I kind of wish that I had written them all down because we there was times where we just had just enough, and we weren't bad at managing money. We just only had like one major customer for a long time, and then we had two major customers and three, and so as we grow, it creates a little bit more risk and then a little bit more stability at the same time, which is kind of a fascinating change. But yeah, there were definitely, and there still is like that. Being an entrepreneur, I always tell them, it's like pushing boulders uphill. Like it's literally trying to figure out what to do every day, how to fix a problem. And the government shutdown, that's just another Tuesday. It's there's a problem around every single corner. It's literally my job is to sort out what to do and how to try to find a way to fix it. Only now, as the business has grown, I have a whole team of people helping me solve problems. It's not just me like it was on day one. So that's kind of nice that there's a team. But yeah, there's never you'll be a business owner, you'll be on easy street.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the myth of being a business owner is that you hear these stories, and a lot of times I wonder where these myths come from. It's got to be from people that have never been in business, because people that have been in business know that yes, if if you're doing what you love, you're never going to work a day in your life is really true, because you enjoy what you're doing. And yes, obstacles come up and you find ways to get around them. On the other hand, if you don't like, it doesn't matter whether you're the business owner or whether you're an employee. If you don't like what you're doing, everything feels like work.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, there are days that feel like work. Yesterday, we had a lot going on. I called the first meeting at 6 a.m. and I finished my last meeting last night at 9. It was just a day, and I was tired when it was done. So, I knew the adage is nice, but I do feel like there are days where it's tough. But a friend invited me to one of those multi-level media pitches, and I was trying to be supportive, so I went. And the whole pitch was, if you're a business owner, then you can go on vacation all the time and you can, and I'm like, have you seen a business owner on vacation? My kids are all playing in the pool while I'm next to the pool with a phone in my hand. um, but I don't want to complain because you're right. I love the work I do. I feel like I'm uniquely, it uses my unique gifts and talents in a way that I feel inspired and excited by, but doesn't mean I'm not tired at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. I, and like you say, the people that are pitching those programs where yeah, you only work 4 hours a week, yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, I think there are people out there that figures that stuff out, but I don't know. That's a different podcast, probably.
yeah, and and I think it's a completely different model. I mean, the model that you're working with in the business structure that you have, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of people involved. So it kind of needs a different structure than one of these, what they might call a lifestyle business. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and we've been in growth mode since day one. We're like pedal to the metal all the time. And so that just requires presence. Um and so that can be challenging because since I started the business, I think about it, I think I've had 5 children since then, if I'm doing my math right. Oh, 4 children. I I have 8 children in total, so some days I don't know what I'm doing. Um
and yet you make it all work, because I'm assuming that your kids are happy and you're loving the business that you're growing.
Oh yeah, they're living their best lives. I mean, my oldest is 19 and he's a ballet dancer and he's pursuing a professional ballet career. So he's in LA on his way to Philadelphia. My 17-year-old has a job in Alabama and then the rest of the kids are, one's on a mission trip and one's actually in the working in the office next door. And then the littler kids are at home in the pool probably with their nanny. But they might tell you it's been rough, but it's definitely not been rough. They enjoy it, and it's kind of neat because they're real proud, of me, and I feel like when they do fundraisers for school or they're what do I want to be when they grow up, or even their friends go through these kind of questions. I have a lot of like feedback for them, and they listen. So it's kind of fun to be able to pour into them that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure being able to to a certain extent, be able to move your schedule and whatnot so that you can be supportive and go to their games or the ballet
Yeah.
or events like that.
Right. I rarely miss any of those things. I take off early and organize, and we encourage everybody in the organization, be there for your kids. Just work your schedule around it. You know, it doesn't have to be an either or. I think that was very 80s mentality that women have to like put aside family to work. But men neither. They need to be a part of their kids' lives. And we have we had a bring your kid to work day about a month ago. And then we recently learned about a local organization that has a child appropriate curriculum for sex traffic prevention. And so we're actually inviting them here and then inviting everybody to bring their kids and their friends' kids so we can, just pour into the families as much as we can.
Oh, I love that. That is definitely a unique perspective of how to run a business.
Well, I think I want people's families to want to send their husband or their mom or whoever off to work because she'll enjoy her day at work and then come home and enjoy her home. I think that that's totally possible. There are days that are tough. Sometimes there are conversations that are difficult, but I think by and large, we're really focused on making a place that people enjoy working at and they feel like they're contributing. The work we do we can see on a day to day how it will ultimately land in a soldier's hands one day, and that's a big deal. Our organization's about 30% veterans, and then 100% patriots, American patriots. And so when we're the work that we're doing, I think we see it as a way that matters, and more than just where do I, earning money for my family, which also matters, you know.
So when you think about where the company is today and where you are financially, personally as well, where do you see some next steps for the company? You said you're still in growth mode.
Oh, yeah, we'll never not be in growth mode. Because it turns out that's how I'm wired. I didn't know that. So next steps, I mean, we're continuing to grow and we're looking at how we can expand the organization. When it comes to like how it affects my personal finances, years ago, I read the book uh, by Mike McCallow. It's called Profit First. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a methodology around setting aside profit or money as the organization so that you have money to reinvest in the organization, money for taxes, money for benefits, but also money that I've earned because of the blood, sweat, and tears and risks that we've taken to do this business. And so all that money gets pulled out, on a very regular basis. That book it has been a fantastic book. We've as we've grown, we've made some adjustments and we've learned and improved on it a little bit. But we are intentional about saving and making sure that the company has a future and we personally have a future. I mean, we recognize that um, the world has always, not just recently, but has always been less stable than we'd like to believe it is. And so, whether we're talking about 2008 with the housing market, or we're talking about COVID, or we're talking about recent changes, all those things create uncertainty. And so I think 2008 was pretty rough on us with the houses. We had a couple rental properties and we had a lot of money saved up, but we had to use it all to stay above water. And
Hmm.
so we came away with that with rainy days come, and so we work really hard in the organization and personally to make sure we have plenty of savings for the rainy days. And so that's probably a big emphasis of ours. It's not so much can I buy a yacht, but more like, how is this going to look if somebody were to get sick and I need to walk away from work? Have we prepared for those kind of instances? And so we work really hard to be mindful of those.
And is that something that you also do for your employees?
Yeah, we have a couple. Been trying to grow the benefits that we provide for them. since, in the beginning we had like no benefits.
Mhm.
And now, now we have a 401k, and we've got just a regular set of health and medical too. But then we're starting to look at how we add, making life insurance available. We do lunch and learns, and we talk to them, especially the young folks, about budgeting. We brought one of our more senior employees came in and talked about, this is how I do a budget. Here's a template. We've talked how we brought in an expert on how important it is to save for retirement. And while you don't have to participate in our IRA or our 401k, it is really, really important that you save for retirement. And so we brought in somebody outside to do another lunch and learn and talk to them. And so we're trying to, we also try to contribute to education and their education and growth. So we're trying to really pour into the employees as much as the business allows. We also have to reinvest in the business and reinvest in our own tech and things, but we're trying to stay mindful of happy employees stick around too. And then also ones that can afford their lifestyles stick around.
Yeah.
So we do try to spend a lot of time, and as we continue to grow, we continue to look at opportunities to ways to pour into them, whether it is financially or training or that we give, or education that we support outside of the business.
Yeah, and that's unusual for a company, especially in the defense contracting space, to offer all of that. At least from the couple of companies that I've worked with over the years. Um,
I
so
don't think we do anything like the other people in our space do. I don't know what they do, so I shouldn't say too much, because I've never worked for one of them. But we're trying to be different. I think we come up against competitors whose sole focus is profit and nothing more. And the thing is I don't disagree with profit, in the fact that a business is not a business if there's no profit, right? It's where does the money come from in order to do all the work that we're doing? So we have to be profitable. We're responsible to do that to our employees. But at the same time, can we do that and have a mission beyond that? When we look at a part that could end up in the soldier's hand and it has a bent bolt, do we not worry about the soldier, and we focus on profit, or do we stop, figure out what's happened, figure out if it's a systemic issue, which could ultimately end up being a profit issue, um, or do we plow ahead? And we've really tried to instill a culture that is warfighter first. Like, if you're standing there making that decision, what is the best benefit to the warfighter? And we're finding that you can still be profitable and still look at the world that way, and you can still be profitable and pour into your employees. In fact, happy employees make a company more profitable. I think there's science and studies around this, but I think it's also common sense.
yeah, I agree. And there's plenty of statistics out there as well that tell you that if I want to say you're spending like 6 months or 9 months worth of salary to try to hire a new employee versus, maybe 2 months of a benefit that you can add to the bottom line and actually hold on to somebody that's valuable. And now you hang on to that knowledge as well as that valuable employee rather than having to start over from scratch again.
Right. And nobody's going to be a great employee if they're stressed about how they're going to care for their family and um, as an employer, I don't want to put added burden on them. We do try to be real fair about how we pay. We use the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and salary.com. The government really pushes us that we pay fair wages and salaries, which does two things. People aren't overpaid, which I know everybody would probably like to be, but people aren't underpaid either. You know, we couldn't be able to explain it to the government anyway if we overpaid people or underpaid them. They don't allow us to either, really.
Mhm. So, what advice would you have for women who want to start building their own financial independence, especially if they've relied on a partner in the past?
Oh, yes. I think this is an interesting topic, and I've been telling my girls about this. Like, it used to be that a woman married a man because he would support her and protect her. But we live in a world now where um him being able to do that is wonderful and fantastic, but she doesn't have to settle for something that would be not a great plan because she needs support and protection. You know, I think that, I know our culture pushes education, and I don't agree that education is everything. I think that um, when I look at my education, I feel like it didn't get me where I am. It's just a couple of pieces of papers I got along the way. Um, but I do think that there is the idea that I got to get the skills. So how do you do that? It might be education. If you want to be an engineer, you got to get the piece of paper from the university that says you took the classes. But if you want to be an expert in a lot of different areas, like AI is an obvious one, you don't go to the university for that. That training is available and free all over the internet. You need to get yourself technically proficient at whatever it is. I've noticed a lot of women talking to me about, wanting to get a good job or wanting to earn more money, but they have no technical skills whatsoever. Can't use a computer. Well, boy, in our day and age, that makes it tough to be financially independent because the jobs that require, even if it's basic computing skills, which can be gotten simply through YouTube classes. I mean, you don't have to go to a college to get these things, but you do have to be disciplined enough to sit down and learn it. So I think when we're talking financial independence, I think the resources are all over the internet and free, but you have to be motivated to go after them. Because if you want somebody to do it for you, you're not going to get to um, being independent. That's that's like the opposite of the definition of independent. But I really encourage women, one, to increase their skills. If you do have a great job, then get better at it. Don't go status quo. And then two, live within your means and below. I know it's really nice to have a really fancy, dependable car, but there's some pretty decent cars out there that aren't fancy. For a long time, I drove a really great Kia, and I think sometimes we're more focused on having the fancy, shiny things and not so much on being mindful about what we can afford. And so, we've grown into being able to afford a little bit nicer car. But I think that it's really important to live within your means or below them and save. Rainy days come; they just plain. I remember the first time when I graduated from high school, I moved out. I got a roommate. I had just enough money in my budget to make it, just enough. And I was going to college full time, and I was working full time. And I was doing okay. I couldn't really do anything extras, but somebody broke into my car and they smashed the window out, and it was in Colorado in the winter. And so I had to get it fixed. You can't just leave it, right? And that $250 deductible, which is quite a while ago, um, that I had just enough. I didn't have an extra $250. And that was such a powerful lesson because I went from getting by okay to not having enough food.
Mm.
And I was 18, and if somebody asked me to go on a date, I was there and I got extras and took it home. It was really bad. And I ended up joining the military because I was really struggling, and the military was an opportunity, which is another thing. I tell people they want to go to college. You don't have to get in debt. You don't have to borrow money. If you're an able-bodied person, there's ways to pay for college beyond just um, getting loans. And so I try to discourage anybody from borrowing money unless they've got some sort of path to repay that very, very quickly. But these things where you get a loan and then you keep it for 2 decades, that's not good. I joined the Army. I'll say out loud initially to earn the college money. I am an American and I'm proud American. But I needed college money is what I needed. And I needed to make sure I had a food and enough money that if a car window got broken, I'd be all right. Um, and then the Army went and they paid for my associate's degree and my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, so I never had any college debt ever. And so when you hear people now, like, I don't have enough money for education, and I'm thinking, for some women, that's difficult. If you're married and you have children, that's probably not a great choice. But when I was a young single woman, it was definitely an option for me. I took advantage, and yeah, it wasn't easy. And I ended up having to do some hard things. I spent 2 years in combat, but that's not everybody's military experience. You do have to kind of be ready for that if you join the military. But But I also got a lot out of it, far more out of it than what I put into it, and it wasn't just that. It was like the leadership skills that I got. Not that I lead like that very often. I certainly can, but I don't. I try not to lead like that. That very direct masculine authority that's necessary for wartime environments. But I did learn a lot about leadership and a lot about having difficult conversations and a lot about working with people that are hard to work with. So I think sometimes it's about getting out there and being scrappy and finding out. When I started the business, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't have a business degree at the time. I had a degree in aeronautics and a degree in foreign language, like not helpful, right? But that doesn't really stop me. I just like called everybody who would answer my questions. I went to the community college and took some of their adult advanced or learning. They had real cheap classes for adults that wasn't actually like credit worthy classes. And we know with AI now, you can just ask anything. Of course, you should probably really check your work. Um, but I just used every resource I could find. And people laugh, but there's a lot about business I knew nothing about. And I am still like a continual student of I'm getting ready to go on like a seminar next week where I'm going to learn all week. And I do this about quarterly. And I take all the skills that I learn, I bring them back and improve the organization. And then I do it over and over and over again. So I think that women that want to be financially independent, it becomes about just being, learning the skills you need to, and then living within your means that was a very long answer for those two things. But
And is there one financial decision that you think every woman should make before she might feel ready for it?
oh, I think, oh, that's a tough one. I do think, you know, being willing to, I think of debt is something that it like you become I hesitate to use the word, but I'm going to use it, I guess. You become a slave to the person that you are now indebted to. And you made yourself that. So I think the decision ought to be no debt. I do get that there's situations buying a house is very difficult without debt, but if you're really wise about how you buy a house and you save up and you don't, you're not upside down and things, that might be a situation. But buying depreciable assets with loans, like a car, um, what happens when that thing gets munched? Like does it work? And it loses the value. So I think with the house, at least it's a generally appreciating asset over time, and you just need to stay there. But I think a real commitment to avoiding debt, or at least using it very, very carefully. I do think for a lot of people, the way Dave Ramsey teaches finances is pretty wise. If you are very, very responsible, then you can use credit cards and things like that. But as a younger person, I kept a budget all the time. Not a fancy one. I didn't get a special app. I didn't get a special whatever. I just researched it and kept it on Excel, and I kept track of everything. And so, living within your means and a budget and not using debt, I think, is the biggest thing. Because the biggest holdup is, oh, I can't afford this. And now I definitely can't afford it because my credit cards are maxed out. And then you can't make choices. What if you have a horrible boss, but you owe money to somebody? You can't make choices then, or your choices are more limited. So I think that one decision, just being really committed to avoiding debt, is top priority.
So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thank you to Katie Bigelow for sharing her story and reminding us about how debt can limit our choices and really hold you back. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the Empowered Money Girl with your friends. The more we spread these stories, the more women we can empower to live boldly, both financially and in every part of life. Until next time, keep thriving, and remember, your journey to empowerment starts with you.